My name is Gerelmaa Batchuluun. I'm a co-founder and then also a CEO at the STEPPE Group, which is an international global company that has 4 branches in Singapore, South Korea, United States, and Mongolia as well. As well as we have a flagship product called Ordo Wealth Tech. It's a Fintech platform. And our company has been running it about 1.5 years, and I'm a co-founder and CEO as well. Yeah. So I think it all started in 2008. So I went to study mathematics in South Korea. So the school name was KAIST. It's a Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. So that time I didn't know, but it was one of the most competitive science and technology engineering schools in Asia. And I was lucky enough to be part of it on a full scholarship. So when I got there, coming from Mongolia, I thought I was enough. I was pretty smart and pretty good, but the peers at school, at college, everybody was incredibly smart. They were like way ahead of the technology, way ahead of the science, and they knew exactly where they were going. And then professors and my peers, many of them, like incredibly smart people, so passionate about their fields, why they're studying microbiology, why they're studying electrical engineering, they were so sure about it. But as for me, I just thought, well, hey, I'm good at math, and it's something that I can live a very comfortable life if I finish finance and mathematics. But then around 2011, 10-ish, I had a bit of an identity crisis. And, for a junior student at the college, not knowing where exactly I am going, of course I enjoyed what I did, but at the same time I wasn't so sure if it was the right path for me. Everybody expected me to finish and go to either Wall Street or work in, financial companies or continue my academia up to the PhD level. And I wasn't sure, And things were expected from families and society or friends, but I wasn't sure if it was the right path. I felt like I was cast in the wrong movie, So I took a semester off. So I started hang out with a lot of people from different arenas, artists, musicians, and engineers, tech innovators, those the kind who would quit their college and start their tech company. And it really opened up my eyes. There is a whole different world out there people go through. There is no one given path to reach what you can do. So it gave me a lot of insight about life, what I actually enjoy and what I wish to do. So I sat down with my advisor. So he was an incredible person, I guess. He knew exactly, kind of scanned my personalities. And he was already sort of knowing, I was not fully engaged or fully enjoying my studies in the math. And then he told me, hey, I know it doesn't make sense, all this, but if you start applying it to different parts of the world, different parts of the business, it actually makes sense. It becomes something applicable. And I think with your personality, you enjoy while giving to others. And creating something for people. And why don't you try taking some innovation management and entrepreneurship courses and being part of this entrepreneurial seminars, so which I did, and I really enjoyed it. And luckily, coincidentally, I think my laboratory at that time I was taking internship, it's a network computing lab. And our seniors, PhD students, master's students, they just called me up. Hey, we have this new project, and I think we're going to make it into a startup, and we need a CFO. Are you in? They just called me out of blue, and without knowing what I'm walking into, the title of CFO sounded fancy, so I said sure, I'm in. And that's how it all started, and that was the very first startup. I become a part of it. That's where I learned how to, execute an idea to bring it, actually pitch it to the investors, get funded, create applications, and continue pivoting it and deliver it to the end users. So it was a successful project, and we ran successfully for 2.5 years. We created several PhD theses, master's theses, and all of us graduated, and all our intellectual property stayed with the lab at the school as well. But up to this day, we're still, staying in touch, and many of them become my advisors, even though we went to different directions. So that's how it all started. So I guess since 2010, yeah, I've been involved in 12 years in science and tech industry. But I guess I come from very diverse background as well. So after my studies at Korea, I thought, hey, where is the unconquered territory, you know, something that I'm missing. So I went to Europe. So I studied innovation management in Paris, the University of Versailles, and it's a joint international program with Oxford, University of Zurich, and University of Versailles as well. It's a track run in English. So met a lot of interesting international people coming from different backgrounds as well. So the reason why I went there was that, sure, innovation is cool, you know, all this grinding of the startup, fast-paced, you know, scaling up, growing fast. But how do we keep it sustainable, you know? After all, we just have one planet, and we keep on creating this like consumer-driven products to make it cheaper, faster, you know. But then what of the after effects, and how do you make it more sustaining, more user-friendly, and at the same time keeping it, you know, earth-friendly and environmentally responsible and conscious. So that was interesting, and that's why I studied my master's, and so my thesis was around that as well. And part of our program requires us to start an internship and potentially work long-term in the you know, companies or in the European Union. And luckily, I got into OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So I was the first Mongolian, and Mongolia is not even a member. Yeah. And our you know, bosses, they were like, wait a second, like what's going on? She's not a non-member, but you know, they really liked what I was doing with my thesis, and they thought I could be kind of a good addition to the team, to the business and advisory committee. So that's how my, I guess, lobbying career in the politics and policy regulatory industry started. So it was very interesting because we represented the biggest OECD member businesses, you know, Coca-Cola, Samsung, LG, you know, all of them, and sitting down and hearing the CEOs and talk about, you know, healthcare, innovation, and corporate governances and all that, being part of creating this whole European Union wide range of, you know, guiding policies. That was very interesting, and that kind of opened my aspect of, you know, not only just private sector, but also the regulatory part plays a huge role when it comes for, you know, equal economic development. So there has to be always a cooperation. We have to sit down and understand each other. And the bigger private sector, especially driven by technology, they play a huge role. So it switched my perspective a little bit. Yep, so after Paris, I headed to New York. I'm a nomad. I'm pretty much all over the place. And naturally, you know, I would work in Wall Street, and, you know, I was trained mathematician and have the innovation background. I would be like quant. But then again, episode number 2 felt like I was in the wrong movie. I was in one of the most dynamic, beautiful city, but I was not enjoying it, you know. It's just like sit behind your computer every day, grind, looking at the numbers, making other people rich. And
something was missing.
Right, and yeah, so my friend from Australia that I studied together at KAIST, he was doing his PhD at Stanford. So we got together in New York, we sat down and talked about all sorts of our struggles and lives, and hey, like, you know, there is a thing called human-centered design and industrial design, you know, and different methods of applying innovation into new business models. And then he told me, why don't you do that to your own life, you know? You should apply the design thinking to your life and figure out what you want, really. So we sat down and had an impromptu workshop in a cocktail bar. And we figured, oh, hey, there is this possibility, you know, startups coming from Asia, like China and Korea, Japan, trying to enter US market, but they have significant difference when it comes to cultural and then also the user interface and the whole like process of it. And why don't we help them out? There is a niche space. So that was the beginning of a STEPPE TECH. So we were engineering, design, innovation, consulting company. Why consulting? Because it's one of the cost-effective ways to start businesses. You know, all I can do is like my time and my you know, commitment with the client. So our one of first clients come from very much academia because they were doing studies, and then slowly we grow working with the Korean government, some of the prominent Chinese VCs, trying to enter the New York market, and then as well as the Barclays and many of the interesting accelerator programs and the startups. So from there, it just, it was fun, like learning. Actually, many of our partners, like including today's partner Chainalysis, comes from New York partnership way back then, like, 9 years ago. And yeah, so the good thing is just like keeping a good reputation in the business, keep on, delivering what you promised, like keeps all these partners, even just after like 10, 15 years, they stay with you, committed, they explore new paths. So that's one thing I learned. Yeah, and then STEPPE TECH, since 2017, we thought, okay, no, consulting alone is not enough. We have to become developers ourselves, and we have to deliver softwares. And so we got into several different tracks at the same time, and the finance naturally as well. So STEPPE TECH has grown into a group company, STEPPE Group. So we operate, like I said, 4 different jurisdictions, United States, and then Mongolia, and South Korea, and then Singapore. And we're planning, I think, Dubai expansion by the end of this year as well. Yeah, naturally we are a fintech company, I guess, finance, traditional finance, on top of that, technology, and more innovative of a way of business models applying to our daughter companies. And the most beautiful thing, there are like, I guess, 2 layers. One is like very philosophical, like why we even doing it, why finance matters, and why we are trying to develop this, using the technology, making it more inclusive, more democratized for people, who does not have access to regular financial services, making it cheaper, making it accessible. It really like comes down to our team's like philosophy of finance should not be money-centered, it should be human-centered, because after all, money has to work for people's needs, for them to create things and grow not only just financially, but also as a human being, as a society together. And the key thing, the vision comes from our team is that within technology, finance, whatever it is, it just has to serve for the good of the people. And the motivation why we're doing, the beauty of it is like, again, that inclusivity, making it accessible for everybody, and actually seeing something that was just in your head, the idea, creating a new path, completely developing a new application and delivering it to people, and then having them think like, oh my God, I can do this, I only thought this was accessible for only wealthy people or the bigger institutions, but I too can do it, Giving that like bit of an financial independence, bit of an like little bit of a spark in the head. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things you can see, like what you can deliver out of it. But also it's the company culture, the team. I think that's one of the most important aspects, because again, we are doing something nobody has done before. You have to create something, and some things are not even regulated. Like regulators haven't even thought of, what is this?
Exactly. Sometimes policies follow after.
Right, and then we have to, creating this whole new path, paving it, and being pioneers. It's always a wonderful journey. But then again, I guess that it becomes a challenge, educating your users and introducing what you're doing to regulators and peoples, and make sure that you are, doing things legally, financially, technologically, ethically together, and it's all sound, it's complies, and nobody's, in the end, hurting or like being the victim of the whole scheme. Yeah.
Of course, sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but I think weirdly our team really enjoys doing this. Yeah,
That's good. That's good.
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody has to do, right?
You can think of STEPPE groups like financial and technological traditional companies as like kind of electric plug. You can put like different devices on top of it in charge. So we do have asset management, private fund, non-banking financial institute, and all these like traditional licenses. So doing traditional business with those is just plain boring. Everybody's doing it. So what else can we do with this? Let's get creative about it. So that is ORDA. And one reason is that we as a whole team and as a founder believe that as a nation to prosper together, each individual has to have their own prosperity, like each the smallest unit, and then family, and then, as a collective society. But for a person to become somewhat happy or, contributing member to the society, you have to have several, factors to be fulfilled. And one of them is finance. Without having economic independence, financial freedom, you cannot do much. All you have to do is like worry day-to-day problems. Do I have enough to eat? Do I have, a place to sleep? So, and all these problem sparks, like once you have enough to invest, enough to spare, then you think about education, medical, improvements, and the society as a whole. And to reach that, everybody should more or less invest, save, and we do have those instruments, but they are outdated. They're kind of, like private bonds, capital markets. Again, they're very far from everybody. They don't think, a regular person does not think that person is an investor, like unless, okay, I save my money and sure, like I buy here and there or like some bonds. But when it comes to have you bought like IPO or like anything, everybody thinks, oh, it's just for some rich people or it's mostly for those big institutions, It's like very far from them. So we want to bring it very close to them. It's like included. You too matter. You are the part of this investment, And current tendency is like chasing that top 1% of the wealthy, because they have the money. But what about the remaining 99%? Like with the technology, with the current, our society, it's very possible to include that 99. In fact, it's a much bigger pool, investment pool, than that 1% collectively. So people have not realized their power yet. So our platform, Orda, is trying to give that power, financial independence, inclusivity to each and every individual through our platform. So even you have, don't have millions of dollars, you can have $10 to spare to invest into your portfolio. That's collectively going to give you the same yield as those top 1% in 5 years, Yeah, so that is the goal, and that's why we built it. So we just launched it beginning of this month, and we'll continuously improve it. And we have tested 10 different assets previously, and it works traditionally, but it's very inefficient. It needs to be optimized, and it's fully moving into blockchain. So, like, there are obviously, we're not denying that, goodness or the good yield generations of the traditional assets. Any investor has to have them, as well as the alternatives like Orda is offering, It's diversifying your portfolio. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. We're just simply adding the options like extra room, extra color to your basket. So alternatives tend to be very, used to be like traditionally very high-end and also long-term assets. And if you had known, the richest people in the world usually does not does not cash out their assets, If you look at their portfolios, they have all these real estates, art pieces, and sometimes whiskey casks, whatnot, like all sorts of interesting things. And the reason is that they can leverage it very well and to have cheaper, cash. Then they get into the, stock market play. So it's just like some privilege that most wealthy people have. So we want to kind of bring it into micro level to everybody. And just like them, you can invest in real estate and art pieces and anything that's like alternative, non-traditional assets through our platform. So like these art pieces behind me, you can own, a piece of it. And then once it's appraised, you have seen it at our networking party, like the price went up, then you too are gaining by the amount of equivalent of the shares that you own. So within a night, you can make I think more than 20% of raise, right? So again, it's a lot of work for us to educate our investors because many don't know it yet that there are opportunities out there. But once they know it, they continuously come back. Like people who invested our funds, they always ask, what's next? What's coming, Yeah, so I think it's a good way to start investing, and also it's building a credibility. you don't want to like commit, all your savings. Like just put like 5%, 10% of it and see how it grows. So if it's growing, then you can continuously add on and see. It's basically like snowball effect. You start rolling down, it gets bigger and bigger as the time goes on. Yeah, I don't know if it should be called leadership or just, because I spoke first, they said you do it. Yeah, but I'm so grateful for our members at the committee. And I think I joined when American Chamber. It was probably one of the first tech CEO to join the board. And I think it was very refreshing to them. And by joining that, obviously I felt all these great CEOs, all these great leaders among, but hello, like let's talk about technology a little bit, And they said, well, you're the tech girl, you do it. So we started the committee, and there is a significant increase in the, startup and tech industry in Mongolia. The investment opportunities are there, so there was a definitely need for us to collectively speak, and especially for American Chamber, it has to champion, the new opportunities to regulators as well as, representing the private sectors. So obviously for the tech, United States, Silicon Valley, it's, the go-to place. So for many Mongolian startups, it's important to keep like two countries very close on this aspect in this industry. And like not only just attracting investment, but also exchanging, knowledges, sharing it, and bringing an experience from the Silicon Valley. So it got supported, and all the members and our board of directors, they were very, very supportive. And we do have the most prominent tech companies, and hope to have more as well. Yeah. So from our ICT and Digital Economy Committee, we always look at the next trend, what's happening, and its contribution to economy, and especially in Mongolia. And we all have suffered like 2.5 years of stagnant and growth, and nothing went anywhere. And we have two neighbors who close down the border when they just feel like it. And for our economy, that's like physically very being dependent. And I felt like digital economy, especially Web3 economy, was perhaps a gateway. Perhaps it was a solution for us to increase our economic independence. So we discovered and then had a discussions with the committee members, and then okay, let's give it a try. But the thing is, not many people know about it, like what it is, and only people think it's about metaverse or NFTs, and people feel left out. It's just like for the very niche, small like tech community. But personally, I think it's not only that. Like Web3, Web2, it's widespread. Any businesses are using it. So how do we actually understand it, and is there opportunity for Mongolia? If there is one, what is our competitive advantage, and how do we grasp it, and how do we scale up into this like new economy together? So that was the goal. So we brought in international experts, technology solution providers, consultants, global law firms, and then as well as the local players and our regulators. And the key goal was to understand what level is our local players are at. They're great, the human resources, the ambition, vision, they're not behind anywhere else in the world, the playing field is like almost equal. And then at the same time with the investment opportunities, it's their interest is definitely there. But then, we have regulatory environment, whether if it's pleasant for investors to come in and, boost the growth of this economy. So we want to talk it very openly. What do private sector want? What do investors want? And ABCD, is the regulators are ready to embrace and make it pleasant for them to come in? And obviously there is an opportunity, and I think it was a successful event for 2 days. We talked about several different layers, And people started to understand, okay, it's not just about tech, or like it's not just about this, like, you know, NFT guys, or it's just
It's not just about Bitcoin.
yeah, it's just a part of it. It's like whole different like idea, the whole entire like shift of paradigm happening, and we are not that behind. And if you just like speed up and then start embracing our opportunities, there is a whole lot of, you know, diversified and new kind of economy that can help us to have, you know, borders that's open infinitely, limitlessly into this world, you know, digital world. Oh my God, I use like millions of them because for different uses, you know. So I use Google Suite a lot, Google. So for the team, you know, conversations and emailing back and forth is just fast and easy. And I use, these days with our global partners, WhatsApp has been, WhatsApp has been like, you know, easy way to reach each other. And then I use a lot of trading apps, like many of them, you know, just keep an eye on that. You know, the basic wallets and all that. But I think emailing, WhatsApp, and the third one would be probably social media apps. And you know, that's how you stay connected and see what's up. And news apps, like I guess maybe just by category, I would say the top 3 categories I use is one is for media and news. So you, like Economist and, you know, Financial Times, and you can just get like real scope, like real quick. You pay like small amount every month. So every morning they give you this, you know, scope, like what happened. So it's easy to catch up and see. And instead of watching news, I really don't have time to look at it. And then second category would be communications. So like, you know, Gmail, WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, all of it. I'm all of there. And then the third type would be more of like financial portfolios, you know, this stock exchange apps, and as well as the you know, crypto exchange apps to see like what's up, and like see just the taps on like if the portfolio is doing fine or not. Yeah. So like 3 different categories used. Yeah. Stay true to yourself and don't try to impress others. And because if you know what matters to you the most, if you think it's important, you will work for it against all odds. It always works out. And then it doesn't mean that you have to please everybody around you. You know, if your principle is there, if you know you're there, you don't have to show off or like mask it off. And I think it's a common tendency when it comes to tech, you know, entrepreneurs. They think they have to be like Elon Musk. They have to be like Steve Jobs, you know, out there, like quite flashy, like say big things, and you know, my technology is gonna like reform the entire world or so. It's not that. Small things matter, and as long as you know where you're going, like right people shows up. Like don't compromise your integrity, your values. You know, just keep going. It's okay to be stubborn, but staying true to yourself, because it's easy to get lost. When you're going, there will be advisors, there will be investors, and there will be like, you know, media coming in telling you, hey, yo, you're doing it wrong, you know, and then especially like if you have wrong investors, they try to meddle with your, you know, visions and what you're doing, and then they could be wrong advisors. We've seen it with what Elizabeth Holmes and many of the entrepreneurs, like when they meet with the wrong kind of guys, they can steer you to different path, you know. It's okay to lie a little bit and all that, but it is not, because stay true to yourself, don't bluff, you know, just say either you can or cannot, and bluffing never gets you anywhere. And just, you know, stay true to yourself, vision, and try to deliver what you promised, and I think that will get you far.